Welcome to the Rogue Treatment Podcast.
Welcome,
James,
H.
mate, the time has come.
This is going to be a massive podcast.
I can't wipe the smile from my face. I'm so excited for this.
I am too, and we're literally just going to let this one roll. There's
Yeah.
no time constraints. There's no topic that's off limit.
Yeah.
We really want to, we think we've got an amazing guest that's going to go through in a lot of detail what we talk about a lot in terms of where the physiotherapy industry is at.
Yeah.
And I think this is a must-watch podcast for any physios that are currently studying or any physios that are currently in private practice.
Yeah.
They need to be listening.
And all practitioners, really. Right?
All practitioners.
Like, yeah.
I agree. You know,
Yeah.
osteos, chiros.
Yeah.
If you guys want the
EPs.
the best, EPs,
Yeah.
let's not leave them out.
Yeah.
The best analysis of where our current industry's at and the fixes for it.
Yeah,
Let's call it the fix. This is the
For
fix
sure.
for our industry.
For sure.
Then definitely need to be watching this.
And that's what's drawn us to this guest. And we'll intro him in a minute. But this guest is someone that has opened my eyes as a therapist, but also taught me a lot of life skills as well.
Yeah.
And it just really shows up where our industry is and being so narrow-minded. And that's why we're so excited to have this guest on, because he's definitely going to open your eyes today and open your minds to how the body works, what we should be looking at, different concepts and principles. He's very strict in his ways in terms of those concepts and those principles, and I think that's what the difference is. And it's taught me a lot. I've learned from him for 7 or so years, something like that. You've known him for 10 plus or something like that?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably too long.
But still learning every day. Every time I look back on some of my trainings that I've done with him years ago, and I've learned a lot from that today.
Yeah, and I think that's why I think that's why we're so keen to have him on, right? And you know, from a personal perspective, like it's literally changed my whole concept of treatment. You know, and not only mine, we've literally taken the whole business down this path. Yeah. Because of how much I believed in it. Yeah. Then, you know, the rest of the practitioners believed in it. Yeah. And then it's become our identity of how we treat. You know? And by no means are we perfect at it. Like,
no way.
You know, we're talking about someone with 30, 40, 50 years of experience.
We don't actually
He's
know.
Gonna hate that I was going to say that.
He's a bit mysterious, this guy.
But lots of experience and formulated a way of treatment that's his own, right? But it's so effective that is completely contrarian to the way that we're taught at uni, to the way that we're taught post-uni, to the way that we're taught to analyze things, to the way that we're taught to even just view the human body. It's contrarian, but it's not that fucking hard, and it shouldn't be this way. But anyway, like we said, this is someone who's going to be, you're going to want to watch. It is someone who is going to open your eyes to a different form of looking at the body and how to address not just injuries, but movement. And, you know, let's get into it.
Let's introduce, and the people have asked for him. We welcome Guru Gav.
Guru Gav.
Hello.
Is that all we get?
Well, I was listening to my introduction. I was thinking, who is this person? Because it's not me, you know. So, and I'd like to meet that person. So, but
we're going to get him.
Well, I have to say that when you first asked me, I thought to myself, you want me to be interviewed. I said, how are you going to interview my brain? Because that is really hard.
Yeah,
my brain goes all over the place and really fast. I call my brain Kelpie. Because, when I first came to Australia from England, you know, we have sheepdogs and stuff in England, and I was watching a show about Kelpies, and I thought these dogs are really smart, and they run around everywhere, and then they create a sort of a team where they guide people so well, but it's not in an aggressive way. It's just like, yeah, come over here, yep, and they listen to their owner who has the concepts of understanding what you need to do. And so they just follow and they play. And I thought, yeah, that's me.
I like that. I
Yeah.
like that way of describing your brain.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump.
But I've also got two sides of my brain. One is my Kelpie brain, which is my sort of creative brain. But my other side is my library, and my library was always cluttered, you know. And I never you know, I never allowed my Kelpie to go into the library because you know, people say, well, you'll disrupt it in some way. But what my Kelpie is, just recently, in the last few years, I've allowed my Kelpie to go into my left brain, my library. And what it does is it just goes, oh, you want this? You want to know about concussion? Let me go into the library. Let me pick out these three things, and then comes out and then just teaches that. So there's that connection. And I think when people realize that they can be creative and they can be very logical, they can go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you know, that step, but they can also be creative. That's when you really get the beauty, and that's when you get and that's when you see the beauty in our profession. So
And that's probably what's missing, right? We're
Yeah.
probably too logical at the moment,
yeah,
and we're not. And we're taught to be logical,
yeah,
and we're taught to pull from the library of research papers as opposed to utilize the library of research papers and play,
yeah.
which is the other side of it, and be creative and have a look at the body holistically as opposed to segmentally.
Yes. But one of the things is, you know, I agree with the fact that we need to make some changes, but I always say to people, if you don't know what's in the box, you shouldn't be working outside the box. And so you have to really know what's in the box. So our training teaches us what's in the box. But again, like my Kelpie, you have to allow people to grow and go outside of the box. But the box is really important. The boxes teaches us our basics. We have to know our basics. We can't run away from our basics. Yeah.
That's
Well-
such an interesting analogy.
Yeah,
James, I know
agree.
you got a question to ask.
Yeah, well, look, I wanted to, I guess, dig a little bit deeper before we get into, you know, a lot that we've got to talk about. But the first question that I really wanted to kind of ask is, like, for people that don't know you, right? So a lot of people that will watch this won't know you.
He's
right?
not on social media.
He's not on social
You
media.
won't find him on LinkedIn.
You can't
nothing.
find him anywhere.
Mysterious man.
Right? But for people who don't know you, what would you say your purpose and mission in your profession is?
If you asked me, you know, a few months ago, it would be different to what I do now. But I think the successes that I'm having at the moment are driving my purpose. And I work with athletes, so I think I sort of had two purposes. One is in football, you know, people call it soccer. In football in Australia, by the time you're 17 and you haven't really made it, coaches will start to talk to you and go, "Well, you haven't really made it. We may, you know, start looking to." And people start struggling at 17, and mentally they go, "Well, I can get into the under 18s, and then I can possibly get into the under 20s," and then they start to struggle, and then they give up because no one's mentoring them to say, "Look, do you know what? Your sell-by date is not 17 or 21. You can stay in this profession until you're 36. And if you start to think that by the time you're 21, that's the end, then you will only work up to 21. But if you start to think, I can get to 36 and be fit and healthy. So what I do is I tell people now, I'm going to trade you to 36 to be a class athlete. What that means is I will help you not to get injured. So I've got these athletes who are not getting injured, and they can continue to play to 36. However, I also teach these athletes to be the best. You have to have a really strong mind, because everyone's going to tell you at 17 or 21 that you're going to struggle. Now, again, if you want to prevent things, you prepare them for the struggles. So I always say to people, I'm going to throw you in the deep end, but guess what? I'm going to teach you how to swim. Mm-hmm. And I don't teach you how to swim like, I teach you how to swim in the ocean with sharks around. And I teach you how to, become an SAS of that. So you've got to be able to handle the pressures. Mm. So I had one of my athletes. He went over to Iceland and no, it was Norway, yeah. And I said, the first thing you're going to do is you will want to come back because you'll feel homesick. So one of the things that I understand that what you're doing right now is you're living at home. So why don't you move out into a friend's house and live there for a little while before you go out? And that's what he did. So he understood, okay, well, I have to prepare myself, right? And it's those small details, because I always say, Tom Brady said, Tom Brady had a conversation with Didier Drogba when he met him at the Canadian Grand Prix. And they didn't talk about, do you know what they talked about? They talked about stretching, right? Because Tom Brady understood that to be the best at his age, which was 46 or 45 or however old he was at the time, and he had to be injury-free. And Didier Drogba talked about stretching. And someone asked Tom Brady, why are you the GOAT? And he said, because details matter. And when I'm working with some people who are at the top and details don't matter, then that's going to affect their work. They have to understand details. Now, you can get details because you have the basics, because you worked from the box. Mm-hmm. So, details matter, and we have to look into those details.
So then, one of the things that you mentioned there, right, and the biggest thing that I think I want to explore a bit further was that you facilitate or train or discuss in detail with your athletes, but not just your athletes, anyone that you treat, the importance of prevention of injury, right? And the treatment of that. And then I think on some level, I remember doing PE at school, right? And PE at school, when we did like social health issues and things like that, it was like prevention is better than a cure. Like I think it's sad that I even remember it exactly like that, right? And then we got to uni, and prevention no longer was a cure. It was treat the symptoms, treat the problem, right? And that's the way that our whole industry has gone. But social health, we talk about prevention is better than a cure. Now, at some point, our industry is being geared to deal with injuries. And then once that injury is dealt with, irrespective of whether that person is better, not better, they're an athlete, they're a weekend warrior, we've just dealt with that injury. And then we shy away from the whole notion of, well, how about we fix this so that we're preventing this from happening again? How about we work with you not just to prevent this injury from happening again, but other potential injuries that could come from this because this is now not perfect. There's a chink in the armor, right? And that is probably the biggest thing that I've ever learned from you, but it's not the way our industry thinks. How do you think that, what would you say is the biggest change that we need to make, or what's the biggest thing we can do to start implementing a preventative culture as opposed to a symptomatic culture?
Oh my God, his head's
Jeez. Well, I always say if you're not in the system, you can't help the system, and I'm sort of slightly out of the system, So
Slightly?
Yeah.
You're off the radar.
Yeah, well, okay. Yeah, but
Bet you don't know where to find this guy.
so I I think what I wanted to realize to make people aware of was so how I mean what my biggest difficulty is not to teach people, it is to teach them how, it is to unteach people.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to take them through.
That's gold.
Yeah.
Is that the habits that they've sort of developed in a way you need to unteach?
Well, I know that you said you wanted to sort of flow down this path, but you've got to understand how I started to unteach, which was if someone came to me and said, "I'm really good at this and this and this," I'd go, "Okay, let's go, let's do it." Yeah. If you can run, say, if you can run this time, I'll just put my shoes on. We'll run, and then I'll as they're running, I'm picking up their energy and feeling where they're struggling and such. So let me take an example of running. I was a guy who he'd injured his hamstring, and he was quite concerned about it, and took him down to the track, and I said, let's go for a run. And as we were running around the track, he's a 400-meter runner, and as we were running around the track, I suddenly sensed this panic in him, and I went, "Where did you get injured?" And he goes, "Oh," and he looked around, he goes, "Right here." And I went, "Mm-hmm." I said, I said, which lane? He said, "Fourth lane." I went, "Okay." So I went back, we ran down the fourth lane at the back straight, and I could see him tensing up. And I thought, oh, mentally he's scared of that, of re-injuring himself there. So I said, let's go into the fifth lane. So he ran in the fifth lane, he didn't have any panic. Ran in the third lane, didn't have any panic. So that's not picked up because people don't do that. They don't go out. And that's what I'm talking about, the details as well. But they don't pick up, because I have a saying, if you can understand muscles, you can understand movement. If you can understand movement, you can understand the mind. And that's how I read people. I follow their movement because I understand muscles so well. So I follow their movement and I see that I understand what they're doing in their mind. So I knew he was tensing up, so I just started to go, okay. So what I did was I got some juggling balls out, and I got him to juggle down the fourth lane. And so his shoulders started to relax, and he started to focus on the juggling rather than that. And then I watched his stride length as he juggled, and I went, oh, wow, he can't press off his left foot, right? And so he was landing more heavily on his right foot. And I noticed his right ankle was a little bit stiff. So I treated his right ankle, and then we ran, and he had no pain at all. And he was having, 6 out of 10 pain when he was, so actually around most of the track, he was having 4 out of 10. And I asked him, how much pain do you have when you get to the point that you had in your injury? And he goes, 6 out of 10.
And where was that pain when he was in that?
That was in his hamstring, where he sort of tore his hamstring.
Yeah. So then you obviously you understood his movement and his emotion, I guess, in that, or his mind in that straight, right? What his body was doing.
Yeah.
But then you also understood that it was his ankle that you had to go and then treat from that analysis, right?
Yeah, but that comes down to that comes down to what's in the box. And okay, your anatomy. I do teach. I do tell people that their anatomy is essential for the box. In the box, the anatomy is essential. Yes. But observation skills are the key to understanding that, right?
Before we jump into the observation skills, because that's going to open up like a huge Pandora, right? But for me, when you were describing that story, right, it's I would just want everyone to be very clear on your thought process, right? Your thought process is, well, I need to unteach things, yeah? And just linking back to how we came to this, right? I talked about prevention versus symptoms, right? You when you're treating someone, when you have anyone that's sitting in front of you, your first concept is, well, if I want to prevent this injury from coming back, if I want to prevent any injuries in total, right?
Yeah.
And you've got plenty of athletes that have gone down that path, right, where they are injury free.
Yeah.
Your first concept is, well, I need to unteach the bad habits to create a system of prevention. So if they're moving incorrectly, if their mind is distracted because of previous injuries, I need to be breaking that down and reteaching them better movement patterns, better mind control, that kind of stuff. Is that the
Yes.
concept of prevention?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just on that, we've had someone on the podcast before that talked about going the opposite way. So you talked about muscles, movement, mind. They talked about it completely different, right? And I want to get your thoughts on this, right? They went that the muscles were probably the last on the rung of importance, which kind of rolled us up a little bit. We didn't say anything at the time, but they kind of went neurosystem. So they're talking about systems as opposed to
Systems
concepts.
of the body, yeah.
Systems of the body. So they went neurosystem, cardiovascular system.
Circulatory system.
Oh no, sorry,
Yeah.
neurosystem.
Circulatory
It
system.
was a breathing, neuro-respiratory breathing,
Maybe.
then muscles.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
lymphatic and stuff like that.
Oh, sorry, lymphatic was second.
Yeah.
Yeah. Circulatory
the
was
hierarchy.
third,
But yeah.
and musculoskeletal was fourth, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of goes against everything that you've kind of said, because you've combined maybe when you said you ought to understand the muscles and the anatomy. For you, my understanding of that was muscles and anatomy, including the circulatory system and the neuro system, were combined, right? Now, I'd like to get your thoughts on, when you say muscles, movement, mind. I know you're not dismissing any of the other systems, but how do you incorporate those in that overall concept of muscles, movement, mind?
I've put muscles, movement, mind because people are much more connected with muscles. That's why I start with muscles.
I agree.
Personally, I started with let's take that example of the track athlete with the hamstring injury. I started with his mind. So to me, it's a loop. It's muscle movement, mind movement, muscle.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you understand that loop, then that's the way you don't get injured, because you're always looking at them as in a six-part way. Yes. What's this person? How's this? Because, if you look at an ACL injury, there are two things that ACL injured athletes will always talk about. Will I be as good as I was when when they get back, and will it go again? Right. And so what people do is they go, oh, we'll make it strong so it won't go again. No, you have to understand that you've got to they're in a panic, and you've got to understand them and understand why they're in a panic and what created that injury in the first place. Yeah. So you've then got to talk about, what sort of training did you do before you had your injury, and why did it come on, and you look at all the possibilities. And when you start to look at all the possibilities, then that's when you have to have that sort of crazy brain that looks at everything. Yeah. And when you start to so you don't deny your brain to say, oh, I've got to look at this and this and this. Or, oh, no, I don't have to look at this, this and this. You just go, okay, that person is scared. That person got injured because they started to run up hills a lot. And they did, Coogee stairs, and they got hammered and then they got the injury afterwards. And you start to go, okay, well, what's an ACL? What's it prevent? And so you start to look at so you have to look at the femur and the tibia and how they're going up the stairs. And if they're more knee dominant than hip, then they're going to put more pressure through their knees. So that's why they might have. So you start analysing everything, and
would you say you're essentially giving the power to the client, or
definitely,
the patient,
definitely.
right?
Well, you said patient-centered. It has to
Yeah.
be patient-centered.
Because I think if you're going muscles, movement, mind, right, and I think about what does the patient have control over? Like you said, they understand their muscles more than anything else. Even if they're not super body aware, we are still able to sit there and activate a muscle independently, right? So we know where it is, we know how to do it. You don't have to know the name, you don't have to know its function, but every person knows some sort of activation of their muscle, right? I think, like you said, it's a loop. We probably don't understand movement as much, and that's the connector. And everyone has control of their mind. Yeah. When you go down a system-centric model of neurovascular, lymphatic, all that kind of stuff, yeah, it's there, and you can't dismiss it. But we don't have control over that. We don't have control over our nervous system anywhere near as much as we have control over our muscles and mind. Would you say that then gives the client a better tool as opposed to being reliant on a nervous system that we can really only regulate through maybe some breathing activities or through not being in a flight or flight response, which also we don't always have control over either?
I think you have control over your nervous system. I think because we're and I make this point where it's very easy to criticize and lay blame, but if you slow people down, then you take them. That's what Kelpie does. It runs to the one that's the sheep that's just run off, and it slows it down. It actually doesn't bark at it. It slows them down. It sort of it actually stops and it waits and it watches and then brings it back into the group. And I think that's what unteaching does. You have to be a teacher, and you have to be empathetic to the needs of those people, and that's exhausting, to tell you the truth. I know that one of the physios said to me, he said, because they had a student, and he said all the clients loved him, and he said, do you know why? And I said, no. And he said, because he's empathetic. Straight away they just connected with him because he was empathetic. And when you want to deal with when you're working with sports teams for many years, the first thing you do is you calm the situation, you make it safe, and so you have to learn how to slow things down, and that's how you understand movement. Actually, you're saying that people don't understand movement. It's quite true. I've got. I don't want to jump ahead because you were talking about sort of the smarts of we mentioned because you have to be school smart, you have to be sport smart, and you have to be street smart, and that's how you can prevent things as well. Right.
I'm so keen to dive into that, but I just want to quickly go back to that preventative stuff just for our listeners, and because it's all well and good, like us talking about these ideas of prevention is better than cure, and like trying to look further. I think one of the biggest things that I've always learned from you was, and it sort of shaped me today, and I think when I see a client, it sort of excites me to try and be a little bit different here, because unfortunately, like the practitioner sort of culture is, yeah, you've got an ankle injury, this is the 6 steps I do for every ankle, and if you're worried about going back to jumping, playing basketball, then you just have to do 20 heel raises and skipping every day, and then you'll be nice and strong and you'll be able to go back to it. It'll be fine. Whereas you're talking about how to look at why that ankle broke down in the first place. And that's probably one of the biggest takeaways is for every injury, it's like, well, why did we roll the ankle in the first place? Well, why did the knee blow out when we did the Coogee stairs? Other than just the load, it's definitely drummed into us about load management and all that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, where does what point was it the movement pattern that was developing and the habits that were developing over a long, long period of time has actually then predisposed us to rolling that ankle in that single jump. And I know we're going to dive into a couple of your key principles around that. And I guess that comes back to sort of unteaching. And when you touched on education seems to be a big part of our industry at the moment too. It's like, we need to educate. But
there's a difference between educating someone, this is how you do 20,
this is load
ankle,
management, or this is the ligament of the ankle.
That's not education.
That's not education, right? The education you're talking about, to clarify, is about educating them to be a little bit more body aware about their subconscious and how they're moving and how they're feeling in those areas of their sport. Is that what you're sort of getting at there?
Yeah. As I said, I still want to come back to the observation skills, because then we can talk about Bruce Lee, and then we can talk. But Bruce Lee basically was a huge influence on my life, and sort of, he said, you have to be. I mean, we all know. Actually, I might tell you a little story about one of the students that I was sort of chatting to the other day, and I said, do you know Bruce Lee's most famous quote? And she goes, no. And I said, and she waited for me to tell her.
You like a pause, don't you?
Yeah. And you got. Do you know what I say? My fourth principle is flow, which is all look, listen, feel, play. But flow stands for feeling, listening, observation, and wait. I'm reading a book at the moment called. See, what you're doing is you're just driving my brain to.
Oh no!
That's right.
This Kelpie's going nuts.
Kelpie's going
nuts.
We're talking about this brain like third person.
So I'm reading a book at the moment by. It's an autobiography. Marco Pierre White, and he was the first and youngest. He was the youngest to get three Michelin stars in England, and he taught
everyone.
But he taught Gordon Ramsay, and he made Gordon Ramsay cry. Actually, he was in a corner just crying. Yes. And he said, but one of the quotes in his book, he quoted a French chef, and he said, if you want to eat well, you have to learn how to wait. It's so true, isn't it? Because we don't wait. We go, I'm hungry. I'll just get Uber and get a meal, or I'll just
rush.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never done that. So
and I think
I'm just very sad. I'm just being a smart ass.
Right. Okay.
Do you know what Uber Eats is?
Yeah, I've seen the adverts.
Never used it.
I think Gav gets into the kitchen, gets the knives out, and goes. Gav, sorry. James, you want to go for it. No, go for it.
No, I think just on that, right? Obviously the whole concept of wanting immediate results versus waiting, right? And when you say wait, I look at wait in both forms, like waiting and weight, as in body weight, right? I think when you talk about flow, I'm assuming you mean both, right? Or you're meaning one.
I'm just saying you've got to understand that. So I know that James Penn says he always loves this quote: "Slow is efficient, efficient is fast, slow is fast. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you learn how to slow down, because when people come in, they're panicked, and because they're in pain, and you have to slow things down.
Yeah.
And when you can slow things down, but to be able to slow things down, you have to be empathetic to their needs. And I had a patient yesterday, new patient. He didn't know, and I said, because I get to get in touch with you, it's word of mouth, and
You need to carry a pigeon to get in touch
that's
with you.
yeah. And
Do you have a phone?
I do. It's
so hard
it's,
to get you on this podcast.
Yeah.
Carried him out of his house this morning.
So, but the phone's a little difficult because you have to the dialing off it. It's an analog phone. Now I've forgotten what I was saying. Where were we going?
You're talking
with
about
this?
the new patient.
Oh yes, yeah. And he came in, and I said, "What are the 3 things that you want me to help you with?" And he goes, "I want you to relieve my pain." And I thought, wow. And he said he had 6 out of 10 pain when he turned his head. And I said, "What's the second thing?" And he said, "I want to get rid of my tightness." And I went, "To get rid of tightness in one session?" So he asked me. I said, he wants relief of pain, 6 out of 10. I said, "How much is your tightness?" He goes, "About 7." And I went, "Okay." And then I said, "What else?" And he said, I want you to give me some exercises." And I thought, okay. I thought, I can give the first 2, but I can give all the 3. It's quite easy, because I looked at him and I thought, okay, this is straightforward. And so I said to him, "I can give you generic exercises, but they won't work for you because they're generic."
Yeah.
Yeah. So why have you come to me for me to give you generic exercises? I said, if you want a tailor-made suit, you go to Savile Row, and they make that tailor, and you wait. And you know you have to wait because you know you're getting something really good. So
I love that.
I love it.
But can I just say,
well, I haven't
you
finished
need
my
to-
story.
Yeah, oh, go.
Sorry, go.
Story. Fuck.
So you have to wait, thank you.
I will wait.
Yeah.
Right, so
Simon, forget about your lunch break, mate.
We're gonna be
So-
here all day.
so
Keep going. Sorry, Kelpie, come back.
Come on, Kelpie.
Put him on the lead.
so
No,
what,
no lead.
what was I what
Yeah,
did,
no
what,
lead.
what did you want?
You're going rogue here.
You said to him that if you wanted a tailor made.
Oh yes.
Yes.
So yeah, but basically the end of the thing was, I took away his pain completely. Now I don't like taking people's pain away, because when you take someone's pain away, then they just do exactly the same thing as they used to do.
Like a car.
Right. And so what happens is you take their pain down to a level that they can cope with and understand. So if he could only cope with a 4, I'd have taken his pain down to a 4, and I'd have taken his tightness down to a 4, and then I'd have given him an exercise that allowed him to understand how to maintain it as a 4. But it would have been very specific. If he understood how to take it down to a 2, I'd have done the same thing. He was really good. I went, wow, this guy's, I can take his pain right down to a 0 and understand that. Now, I took his neck pain away because I noticed that his thumb was in the wrong position, so I just worked on his thumb. Then, because the thumb, pollicis comes up to the elbow, I worked on his elbow. And I just worked on those 2 areas, and his pain just went. And he went...
Where was his pain originally?
In his neck.
Yeah.
And well, he had a pain in his back and his neck.
Right.
But because his back was so stiff, his neck was compensating for that. So I just
Gotcha.
worked on that. As soon as I took his pain away, pain away from his neck, his back changed.
Right.
And that comes from what I call the 5 niggles. If you understand, so 5 niggles equals an injury, and when you're talking about injury prevention, what you're really doing is I was training this guy was exceptionally good. He was a track athlete and very, very bright. He wanted to do neuroscience, and I said, how would you describe me? And he said, you always go for the cause of the problem. You always look for the cause of the problem.
But everyone says they do that.
Okay.
I think that's
this-
generalized.
That's
right.
that's
Yes.
the thing.
But the cause of the problem. So, this comes back to maths. I've got. So do you know that Leonardo da Vinci wasn't very good at maths? He left school at 14. But he was brilliant at geometry because he saw shapes, and that's what I see, shapes, and I can do
Yeah.
that. My maths isn't great.
Yeah.
But what I say to people is my maths wasn't great, but I study maths now. So in my spare time, I'm doing maths because I understand that it will help. So I'm learning what I didn't learn at school in the way that I want to learn it now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you just explain the concept of the 5 niggles? 'Cause I think
Yeah.
that's really important
Okay.
in the whole scheme of understanding, beyond the symptoms and the whole idea of untraining someone and the whole concept of, prevention, right? So can you explain the whole idea behind the 5 niggles?
Back in England, I used to run for a club, and we used to on Wednesdays we used to go out for our normal run. So people used to go for a 6-mile run, 8-mile run, or a 10-mile run, and I like the 6-mile run because you can get over it quickly. It's just fast. You can just run easily. 8-mile was a little bit longer, but you can still run fast over 8 miles. But 10 miles was like, oh God, this is hard, and so, but if you got there late, you'd miss the 6 and you miss the 8, and you'd have to run with the 10 milers. And so I'd get there late, and I'd end up running with the 10 milers, and we'd be running, and in a group, and of let's say eight runners, and we'd be sort of ticking along quite nicely, and then someone would sort of you could sense something was going on, and someone would start to pull up a little bit, and we'd look around, and they go, oh, my calf's a bit tight, right? And so we'd all have to sort of slow down a little bit, and then as we slowed down, they started to notice that they could carry on. Yeah, so they carried on, and at the end, I would turn around because I was a physio. I was a physio at that time, and I just qualified. And I said, "Oh, would you like me to treat you?" And they said, "Oh no, it's just a niggle." Right. So then we'd go out for a run next week, and they wouldn't have calf pain. And for a couple of weeks, they didn't have calf pain. And then someone else would say, "Oh, my hamstring's hurting," and such. So let's just take this one person. So over a number of months, they would have a niggle, and it was a calf pain. Then let's say they'd have nothing at all, and then they'd have a little niggle of the hamstring. And then I'd say, "Would you like me to treat you?" And they go, "Oh no, don't worry, it's just a niggle." And then they'd have a little back tightness, and they'd have to slow down because of that. And then I'd say, "Would you like me to treat you?" And they said, "No, it's just a niggle." By the time they got to the fifth one, they'd have an injury. So what I did was I did what everyone else would do, and I'd go, and so let's say they had a hip flexor injury. I'd go to the hip flexor, free that up, and they'd go back to running, and it would hurt again. And then I'd go back to the hip flexor, and it would free that up, and I'd go back to running, and it hurt again. So what I did was I went, well, I know his history. So I went to the calf first. Instead of the hip flexor, I started going to the calf. And then he went, oh, that's better. And he said, I didn't have pain for a week. So then I went to the hamstring, and then I treated that. And he goes, oh, I can run for 2 weeks and no pain in my hip flexor. And I go to the back, and I found that he could run. And by the time I got to the fourth niggle, the fifth was the injury had just completely gone. So you have to become a detective. Again, this is, so going back to the observation skills, Sherlock Holmes is he's a fictional character, but
so just on that, so for everyone that's listening, like observation skills is one of your major concepts that you really drill into everyone that you teach, right? So as you're explaining that, like, I just want everyone to understand that, like, that's huge to our profession that we're probably not really taught. Like, we just take for granted observation skills.
Definitely
So
lost over.
Yeah, lost over. So if you want to, as you're describing that, I thought that's super important to add in.
Well, if you think about every child, the first thing that one of the first games that we play, I mean, we play peekaboo. Yeah, that's observation skills in a sense. You know, that's and then we're as we get older, we play what's that? That's that seeing game where you have a
Hide
letter.
and seek?
No. Oh, we play hide and seek, but that when you're in the car and you go, I spy.
I spy,
Yes,
yeah.
So you play I spy. Well,
My
why?
kids love that. They cheat too, though.
Yeah. but what you're doing is, why did we stop playing I Spy? I play I Spy all the time. I go, there's
With yourself.
yeah, exactly. So
How many
you
cameras are in here?
3. So
Simon's neck.
so you start to look much more, and actually, if I do go back to Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote Sherlock, he was good friends with. That came about because he was Arthur Conan Doyle was a doctor in Edinburgh, I'm sure, and his mentor was Joseph Bell, and his friend was I think William Gower, and they basically could go into a room and just understand. I think he spoke of William going into a room and realizing that one of his patients who was dying, they didn't know why. And all he did was he went in there and he went, oh, their lips are different, it shouldn't be that color. And he realized that they were a painter, because with painting you had to lick the tip of the paintbrush in those days, and he got lead poisoning. So he could work that out, right? So you look at what you do is you start to expand your eyesight. You don't start to narrow it. Yeah, and in sport, each athlete, we're told to scan, but what they're doing is they're just moving their heads, but they're not looking, right? If they're just moving their heads, then they still don't see. But if you watch the very good football players, they can move their heads and see. Right.
I'd argue there's only maybe a handful, maybe not a handful, maybe a couple of handfuls of not just football players, but any professional athlete that involves like a ball sport where you do need to scan. There wouldn't be a lot that could do that. Like you said, they're scanning, they're all moving their heads, but I'll use the example of Messi versus anyone else that's playing at the high level. They're scanning, but they're probably just looking for danger. It's like, okay, cool, that's where that player is. Whereas Messi will scan and go, okay, well, that's where I'm going to run. That's where the gap is. That's where this player is. That's where that player is. That's where my threat is. Like, there's a different level of observation as opposed to just moving your neck and looking for danger.
So why, if there are only a few people, should we not be learning from them?
We should be.
Yeah. So regardless of whether there are only a few, we should be studying them. That's why I want people to study Tom Brady and study the details. I mean, look at Pep. Pep is a detailed person, right? If you now look at all his students, Arteta, is detailed person, and they look at the details of the personality of their players as well.
Yeah,
they don't just bring anyone in. So we have to. So going back to the observation skills, one of Arthur Conan Doyle's friends was Rudyard Kipling, and we all know he wrote The Jungle Book, but he also wrote a book called Kim. And Kim is I think it's based in India, and he said he had this street urchin went around with this monk, and he taught him how to, every single time he walked into a room, he had to see 3 new things straight away. Boom. Yeah. And I thought, when I read that, I went, oh, I can do that. It's easy. So when you start that young to look. So all my athletes, I had a little look at my athletes, because I had to write a CV. Jeez, I had to, you know.
Did you? You wrote a CV?
Yeah, because one of my.
Yeah.
Oh God, it took me.
That would have taken you.
Mysterious man.
It did take me ages.
You
so
ripped it up after, didn't you? Sorry.
Shut up, hey.
Put him on.
CV. Why did you write the CV?
You got me.
I know that was for. So I sometimes go. I go over to Europe to help out with some teams and stuff, and they wanted to see why I did what I did, and so I had to look back on my past and do that. But just coming back, because I can remember some threads of some things I talk about. But just coming back to Kim's game, they teach the army and the police force Kim's game. So Kim's game is basically you go in and you start to remember things. And we all love those memory games where you put cards down and you just turn them over and then you turn them back and then you have to remember where they are. Now that's teachable. You know. Oh, that's what I was going to say about. So in writing my CV, I thought, oh, when did I start coaching? You know, in football, and I had about, I think I had 6 because I was so good at dealing with growing pains for athletes. So I remember someone came in and he had a whole file of his son. He'd seen everyone, and he said, "Oh, growing pains will take me 2 years to get over." But he said, I don't like to see my son in so much pain. And within 2 weeks, I'd got him back to playing with no pain at all. And so he didn't quite understand why that was the case, but he referred other people to come and see me, and who also had growing pains. And within 2 weeks, everyone was back. So they stayed with me. So out of those 6, 4 stayed with me, and for up until they were 17, 18, 20, 19. Of all those 4, every single one became an international, and not one of them got injured within that time.
I think, like, going back to those, what you sort of said before, and this is probably one of your biggest differences amongst many, and this is touching on the observation, but your detail with those 4 compared to what the other 2 received, that's what's going to help them. When we talk about prevention, just moving better, using the body as one, all those sort of things, and not focusing on one single area. That's what's going to take them to that next level, right?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
When it comes to the observation and the detail, like Harry's talking about, what are some tips you could give, practitioners that, realistically, they don't have that level of detail. They don't have that level of observation, and there's lots of different reasons why, right? And I think it's because we're not taught to look for certain things. We're taught to diagnose, analyze, treat, right? Yes, we can add observation in all those 3 steps, right? But whenever we've, put a new physio in a mentoring session with you or a student, right? The number one thing you'll always tell them is observation, right? We understand now the reasons for that and the detail that needs to be brought into that, right? But what would you say is the level that and what they need to be kind of looking at? I know that that's a narrowed question because they've got to be looking at a lot of different things, but where would you tell someone to start? What's the first step for the general practitioner that's out there that probably doesn't have those observation skills?
So a couple of things going through my mind. One is you have to unteach them so that they realize how powerful observation skills are. The reason why you're unteaching them is because as soon as someone comes in, people think that there's only one cure to a problem, right? And there's never one cure to a problem. So if you have a shoulder injury, then you do get a TheraBand and you pull it to once,
And you
do
fuck the shoulder more.
well. So you move your arm out to the side and and that's the one exercise. Or you look at the rotator, you look at the rotator cuff muscle. So you have to unteach them about that. You have to teach them that there's more than one reason. There's more than one contributing factor. Yes. So if we come away from the cause, but they're contributing factors, right? So
niggles or something around
yes,
that. Yeah?
Yes. Well, it's just like I know your kids, so one will rile up the other possibly, right? And so you don't go in and you punish one. You listen and you go, okay, what did you do? And what did you do? Right? And then you start to work things out. And then you might punish both of them in a different way. Yeah. But you start to teach them that you teach them the boundaries. You teach them why it got to this level. You teach them how to calm down. You teach them all those different things, and that's done with empathy and an understanding, and people don't want to learn when they're anxious or and scared and in pain, and also when they feel that they're right. So those kids will go, oh, but I was right. She took it off me, and she'll say, no, he took it off me, and they'll still be having that battle, and so that you make them aware of observe what the other person's feeling as well. So you have to put you teach them as my favorite book, To Kill a Mockingbird. You have to walk around in their moccasins. Atticus said to Scout, walk around in someone's moccasins so that you understand that. And that takes time. So the observation skills is, you have to become empathetic, but I would say that start looking just. It's a bit like if you look at one of the reasons why the National Geographic is so popular is because it has great photos in it, and to get those photos you have to have a keen eye. Right? A painter has to have a keen eye. Yes, all the top professionals have keen eyes, and so as a physio, if you want to be really good, you have to have a keen eye, because that's exactly what everyone else is doing.
And looking beyond.
And looking beyond. And so, because then you can understand the consequences of your actions as well.
Are you finding, you've treated across lots of generations now. And, you've got a lot of people that you've taught, over those years as well. One of the things that, and I don't want to bring a bias to it, but I'd like to get your idea on this, right? But I think, a lot of the younger practitioners that are in the TikTok age are looking for quick fixes, right? Are looking for the symptom relief, that you mentioned, that someone before said to you, but you go to the cause. And that's the new fad at the moment, is find the cause of the injury, If someone is trying to be a good physio, right? I'm not trying to be a prick when I say this, but the way we're taught is symptom treatment, right? If someone wants to go beyond that, they might try and look for the cause, yeah? But again, if you're looking for the cause, we're in a TikTok age where it's like, that's the cause. And they're putting their finger on something to get an instant result, right? Whereas everything you've talked about today is like untraining, retraining, looking at things in more detail orientated, which there is no clicked fingers unless you've got 30, 40 years experience, right? So the average person in the TikTok age can't do that, yeah? So as you're trying to teach people
the average,
now...
And the average in the TikTok is they have become accustomed to doing that.
Yeah.
You have to unteach them.
Correct. So would that be your first go-to? Is like, you talked about with the guy with the neck pain. It's like, I can give you those if you want, but then why'd you come see me? I do my way this way. Do you think that that's maybe what's missing is we're probably not taking that time to take a step back and work out how we need to unwind things. We're not taking a step back and going, okay, what can I observe when this person is not just moving, but just even sitting in front of me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think we're paying that much attention to our patients at the moment. And I'm not saying that as we're not giving care, but I don't think the average person is going to the detail that you're doing.
To answer your question in a sort of roundabout way, I was we're on our way to Portugal with the football team, and I was talking to the coach, and I said I was watching the guys. This was quite early on in their training, and I said these were athletes who wanted to become professional footballers. And I said to the coach, I said, have you noticed there are about five guys who are carrying injuries at the moment, and I can guarantee you that they'll all come to see me at the end. And they all came to see me, and I thought, I'm going to ask them a question, just one question. I said, well, it's a three-part question, but just one question, and I said, do you want? So I saw them individually. I said, do you want good treatment, average treatment, or excellent treatment? And out of those five, 3 said good and 2 said average.
2 of them said average. Did they understand what average meant?
Well, I said, would you like to change your answer? And one said, I guess good then. And then the other one said, no, I just want average treatment.
No one said excellent?
No one said excellent. They all wanted to be. Well, that took me 3 months to think about, actually, because I was blown away. I was thinking, why doesn't anyone want excellent treatment? Now maybe that's because they don't understand the concept of excellent treatment, or they have to put in the effort for the excellent treatment.
Yeah, and the impatient, and I guess it's also like you say, they've got to be willing to untrain previous thoughts. If it's too stubborn in our ways, and we're not actually open to learning new patterns or new concepts, we're not going to be prepared to untrain old habits, to learn new habits. But then you add in, like you talked about waiting before, I'm not going to wait around to do that. That's it. I'll need an answer now so I can go back to my life.
Which is probably one of the biggest things we've seen in our practice as we've moved into this concept of treatment, is that there does become stuck points with patients where they probably aren't willing to wait, do want instant answers, or are searching for a quick fix, and we're not about that, and then it becomes difficult, right? And it becomes difficult, I think, on 2 levels, and that's probably where a lot of physios get stuck with this method of treatment, right? It becomes difficult on 2 levels. 1, because maybe we haven't really understood what the client wants, and 2, we haven't set expectations around what we do. Yeah, and then we're then playing catch up if we haven't done that. And then and unfortunately, no one likes to blame themselves. So we then start blaming the client. Oh, they didn't listen to me, or, they didn't stick with it, and all those kind of things, when it probably was an issue up front where we didn't really set the expectations or understand what was wanted from that client.
Yeah. More often than not, it's interesting that clients or patients will come into the clinic with pain, right? And we're saying, going back to the concepts, the 5 niggles equals an injury. That's the fifth niggle. That's what they're not coming in because, oh, my calf hurt 6 months ago, and then it was my hamstring, and then it was my back or whatever. I'm coming in for my hip flexor right now because that's sore, and that's what they're telling the practitioner. And the practitioner's going, okay, I'll just fix your hip then. Yeah. So then it's also up to the practitioner to go, okay, well, that's where your head is. I understand that's where your mindset is. You just want to get the hip flexor fixed so you can go back to running or go to an event or whatever. But I then need to actually understand that, or make you understand that you want to actually go beyond that. And I know that, but you don't actually realize where this injury first started. And that's where that education part comes from.
Not only the education, that comes down to pure observation, right?
Yeah.
If you're then able, I think it's observation and communication, right? And it's not communication of the education I'm talking about here. But, when Gav was talking about before, when he asked his client, what do you want out of this treatment? And then if that client goes, I just want you to fix me. Okay, cool. Now I can take your pain to zero, but then comes the communication, but it's going to come back.
Yeah.
Or I can work with you
Yeah.
and fix the cause of this problem, and then the observation skills come in. I can see this has gone wrong. I can see this has gone wrong. Well, you told me this, and you start piecing it all together. It's like, but then if you want me to untrain this and then retrain it, that takes time.
Yeah.
But it's the ability to bring all that together.
Yeah.
Is, I think, what's missing, right? The ability to bring the observation into it, the ability to have those difficult conversations with clients. Like, I've sat in sessions with him. For him, it's no water off his back to have that difficult conversation, right? Absolutely. And to him, I don't even think it's a difficult conversation. It's a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, this is what I need to do. You don't want it. You don't want it. See ya.
Fine.
Like you said before.
Fine.
Why did you come see me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that there's a level of experience that comes with what he says. I'm not saying a new grad maybe can go off and do that, but there's also a level of setting that expectation. Hey, I need to work this out. If you want a quick fix, it will come back. And that's what we're not teaching people out there. It's like that. That's why I come back to that TikTok. All right, cool. You got this injury, do this exercise, do this treatment, and then off you go. And then when the client comes back, it's like, oh, they didn't do the exercise. Yeah. No, it wasn't the fucking they didn't do the exercise. You didn't observe the proper problem.
And it's fun, isn't it interesting how, that same cohort is also taught treat everyone individually.
Yeah.
Right.
They're told treat everyone individually, give them generic.
But the same thing. It's
plans.
like, oh, I've got a knee injury. This is what I do for my knees. You know what I mean? And the true cause is your hip.
The individuality comes down to John has a knee injury. That's the only individuality.
That's right.
It's not John has a knee injury.
And wants to do basketball or versus, picking up kids or something. But and then that's where the observation comes into it, where you actually have to observe that individual person, right? And how they're moving and also you're big on observing it doesn't have to, when we talk, to clarify for our listeners, it's not just, and this is what you've taught me as well, it's not just like observing the way, if it's their knee, the way they squat and observing it really, really well. It's not just that, it's observing when they're talking about their knee, when they're sitting in front of you and saying, or when you go to the point of when someone's sitting in reception, before they come in, or how they walk in, or when they say this, they frown, or those, and you talk about empathy, it's also those things, that can sort of give you an idea of where else this injury might be, or other sort of factors playing into the injury, right? Is that correct there? Yeah.
All right, guys, Gav will be able to talk forever. So we know how important this concept he's going through, and there's a lot that he's discussing. There's a lot more to come. So we've decided to split this into 2 podcasts, and we want you to stick around for the next one, where Gav deep dives into a lot more of his concepts, and we hope that you guys are really enjoying, learning from someone who's a little bit contrarian outside the box.
It's been a fantastic start, and he's a hard man to handle. And I think the second part's going to be put everything back together. So, looking forward to it. We'll see you there.
See you there, guys.